Okay, this is from Nicole. I am currently working on a case of spousal sponsorship, but this marriage seems to go through a very rocky stage, and I am not convinced that the sponsor is going to stick with the marriage. If this happens, I would like to consider H&C. The couple has been married already for 4 years and are traveling back and forth between Canada and her country of origin, Cuba, so they have mostly spent these 4 years together. Her children are still in Cuba, as the previous consultant was not able to get a visitor visa for them. When the spouse to be sponsored is not in Cuba, her mother takes care of her 2 kids. They are all still young, 4 and 6 or so. The children's father has already signed the declaration of non-accompanying parent. I'm curious what you think of an H&C application and how to approach this if this marriage were indeed to break down and the sponsor withdraws. Okay, that's very interesting. I'm wondering how, if they are married and wife is from Cuba, she's able to travel back and forth to Canada, and how she managed to get her multiple entry visa, because I have not seen IRCC to be very facilitative about issuing multiple entry TRVs for spouses or partners of spouses such that they can go back and forth. In fact, I remember having a woman who was from Mexico, and she had a multiple entry visa, and they got married inside of Canada, and then she left and went back to Mexico, and we did a family class spousal application, and we tried to get another visa for her, and they refused until they processed it. So I am astonished. I need to know more information, but that's very unusual circumstances, because once they know that there's a marriage, I have not seen the IRCC to be very flexible about facilitating ongoing in and out possibilities for spouses. They make you either have to plunk yourself in Canada and stay put and do the inland spousal, or you have to stay outside of Canada and do the family class application. So I think that's a piece of advice that I would want to make. Secondly, I think the next, based upon what I've just said, where the Cuban wife ultimately decides to make her H&C application is pivotal. If Cuban wife stays in Canada and makes an H&C for herself, maybe she will get it. If Cuban wife remains in Cuba and tries to make an H&C application for her and her children, I don't think she has a hope in you-know-what of getting that application approved. I have not seen a lot of success with H&C applications made from outside of Canada. I have lots of theories as to why that is the case, but largely it has to do with officer training and guidelines and application packages and so on and so forth. But even if Cuban wife was in Canada, married, and makes an H&C application because her husband doesn't sponsor her, the fact that her children from a previous marriage at ages 4 and 6 are in Cuba is going to be a pretty compelling reason why an officer is going to say no to the H&C. So, in any event, if the stars do align and Cuban wife and mother is in Canada and makes an H&C, it will only be for herself. When you make a humanitarian and compassionate application from within Canada, you cannot include your accompanying dependents. So, I think that ideally, you have an opportunity to sit down with Cuban wife and Canadian sponsor and discuss what the options are for her immigration status and get a solid, determinative decision from Canadian spouse, I'm in or I'm out, and then you can figure out what you can do. But again, I don't understand how you can be married for 4 years and have not made a sponsorship application and have been traveling back and forth between Cuba. 4 years is a significant delay in not submitting a spousal application. So that's something that needs to be addressed. I mean, I have a couple who we just got their confirmation of landing document today. and they have been married for 3 or 4 years, but they're rather financially secure, and they've been traveling the world on their large sailboat, and they don't really have a residence, and he's a Canadian citizen, says, I think in 2 years we'd like to be able to come back to Canada, and we haven't really turned our minds to this because we've been busy sailing the globe. Okay, that's not a bad explanation for why they haven't put their minds to getting permanent resident status for his new bride, but the presumption is that a Canadian spouse in a legitimate relationship is going to want to bring their spouse to Canada at the earliest opportunity. And so if you don't take that course of action, you need to have a really good explanation of why you haven't done that. So again, I think we need more information. Possible but not likely. We need to focus on husband and wife first, and the kids are at peril.